At exactly 5:43 a.m., just before the sun could rise over Lagos, a girl with no shoes, no name, and nowhere else to go stood before the most impenetrable mansion in Ikoyi. She didn't knock. She didn't scream. She only whispered one word, and the gate opened by itself. What she found inside wasn't just luxury. It was a house that remembered her more than she remembered herself. But why was her childhood drawing hidden behind the walls? And why did the reclusive billionaire inside say she was never supposed to come back? This is not just a story about wealth. It's about memory, secrets, and the one door that should have never opened. The sky had not yet broken open when she arrived. The dawn lay curled in silence, its breath still caught somewhere between yesterday's sorrow and the promise of today. Fog wrapped around the gates like an old secret refusing to be forgotten. The street was deserted. Even the birds had not begun to sing. And then she came, barefoot, hollow-eyed, clutching a crumpled photograph in one shaking hand. Zara. She looked no older than 18, though life had aged her far beyond her years. Her body was slight, her skin pale beneath the grime of sleepless nights. Her gray hoodie, too big, torn, and damp, barely concealed the scar that curled faintly along her cheekbone, like a question no one had ever dared to ask. But in her eyes there was something defiant, something unfinished. Before her stood a marvel of engineering, a mansion so modern it seemed out of place on the aging avenue. High glass walls, obsidian gates, sensors buried in the stone. The Adeniran estate, the house of a man the world no longer claimed. Lolu Adeniran, once the golden boy of Nigeria's tech frontier, now nothing but silence. 5 years missing, no press, no guests, no explanations. And still, the lights were always on. Zara didn't touch the gate. She didn't have to. As if stirred by her presence, the sleek steel doors let out a soft hiss and began to part. Slowly, quietly, unprompted. Inside, motion sensors lit up one by one, as if awakening from a long sleep. Cool, white lights traveled across the marble floor, tracing her path. She stepped over the threshold like someone entering a memory rather than a house. She didn't speak. Her footsteps were the only sound, bare soles on polished stone. She didn't know what she was expecting. Guards, a dog, a voice yelling at her to leave. There was only silence and light, as if the house itself had been waiting for her. She moved slowly, cautious but curious. The main hallway yawned open in front of her like the belly of a grand opera house. Velvet rugs, gold trimming, and a curved staircase that climbed upward into shadow. Art hung on the walls, not the kind found in galleries, but deeply personal. Oil portraits, abstract canvases, childhood sketches framed with delicate care. Zara paused beneath one, a charcoal drawing of a laughing woman, stirring something in a pot, her eyes closed, mouth wide open, in song. She recognized the woman, the same one in the photograph she held in her hand. Her mother, a version of her no one else remembered anymore. But here, on the wall of a billionaire's hidden mansion, she was eternal. Zara's knees buckled. She didn't cry. She just sat, slowly, her thin legs folding beneath her as if she could go no further. Her body gave in long before her mind did. She curled up on the velvet rug like a child searching for warmth. One hand still gripped the photo. The other rested across her chest, where her heart beat like a secret. And then, sunrise. Light poured through the glass panels above, bathing the room in gold. Not the harsh heat of day, but a soft, solemn warmth, like someone placing a blanket over her shoulders. Zara fell asleep. She did not notice the faint whir of cameras adjusting above her. She didn't hear the light beep of sensors tracking her vitals. She didn't see the shadow watching her from the upper floor, silent, unmoving, almost statuesque. The shadow stepped back. Upstairs, in a room filled with monitors and dust, a man sat in a leather chair that hadn't creaked in years. His eyes, dark, calculating, deeply sad, never left the screen showing the girl asleep below. He reached out, slowly, and pressed a button on a worn intercom panel. A brief hum. Then silence. Then his voice. Smooth, masculine, deepened by time. "Why are you here, girl?" The voice cut through the stillness, like a blade through silk. "Why are you here, girl?" Zara's eyes flew open. Her body jerked upright, breath shallow, eyes wide with the instinct of someone who had never known safety. Her heart pounded, but the voice wasn't threatening. It was composed, deliberate. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, amplified through the mansion's sound system. "I said," it repeated, slightly lower, "why are you here?" She scanned the room, empty. The stairs above still bathed in morning shadow. No movement, no echo of footsteps. Just the quiet hum of the house awakening around her. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she stood shakily, brushing imaginary dust from her knees, trying to remember how to speak to someone whose presence felt so untouchable. Then, slowly, she raised the faded photograph. "My mother," she said softly. "She used to work here. This was her. Years ago, I think she cooked for you." Silence. Even the house paused. The lights dimmed slightly. A breeze passed through the corridor, though no doors had opened. Then the voice again. Same tone, this time with curiosity laced through its edges. What was her name? Aduni. Aduni Olatoye. She was a chef and a singer. She always sang in the kitchen, even when the gas finished. The silence deepened. Somewhere in the walls, gears shifted, almost as if the house was reacting to the name, processing it. Then came the first of the questions. "Do you believe in unfinished stories?" Zara blinked. I don't know." "Have you ever erased a memory?" She paused. "Memories don't disappear. They just hide." A long, thoughtful silence. Then, "You may stay. One night, only one." The intercom clicked off. The lights in the hallway warmed slightly, then blinked once in sequence, like a soft exhale. Doors further down the hallway began to open, one after the other. Zara stood motionless for a moment. Then she picked up her backpack, brushed her scar absent-mindedly, and began to walk, slowly, carefully, as though entering a memory, not a mansion. The room chosen for her was wrapped in soft gold and ivory. No television, no clocks. Just a canopy bed, walls lined with gentle lights, and a full-length mirror with a thin silver frame. The bedding was lavender-scented. On the desk sat a folded towel, fresh nightwear, and a wooden hairbrush that looked exactly like the one her mother used to use. She stood by the window, unsure whether to feel comfort or fear. Somewhere beneath all the high-tech luxury, something older pulsed, something unspoken. As night fell, the mansion changed tone. Lights grew softer. Music began to play, faint, melodic, and familiar. Zara froze. It was the same song, the one her mother used to hum while peeling yams or rolling out puff-puff dough. The house was playing it, slowly, tenderly, as if remembering her mother too. Zara sank onto the bed. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry. Not the desperate sobs of survival, but the silent tears of a girl who didn't know she still missed someone. And as she wept, the room responded. The lights dimmed, the temperature warmed, the music softened, wrapping around her like invisible arms. The mansion, somehow, was soothing her, or mourning with her. That night, Zara dreamed not of streets, or bridges, or rain. She dreamed of the kitchen, a real one, warm, crowded with smells of pepper soup and fried plantain. She saw her mother again, head wrapped in gel, hips swaying as she stirred stew. There was laughter. Someone else was there too, a man in a white shirt. She couldn't see his face, but he kept passing her mother spoons to taste. "Tell him it needs more salt," her mother whispered, laughing. Zara smiled in her sleep. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the window. Her first instinct was to check if it had all been a dream. The mansion, the voice, the strange warmth. Then she heard it. A soft hum just outside the door. She opened it slowly. And there it was. A breakfast tray. rolled in on its own, perfectly balanced, covered plates, hot tea steaming gently, eggs, bread, ewa agoyan, her favorite, cutlery wrapped in a red cloth napkin. But there was no one there, no footsteps retreating, no clatter of wheels, no whispers of house staff, just the tray, waiting, watching. The house was too silent to be empty. After breakfast, Zara wandered the halls, barefoot once again, though this time not out of desperation, but reverence. Every wall, every corridor felt alive, not just with technology, but with memory. The air held a weight she couldn't name. She paused at a hallway junction, taking in the clean, modern lines of the home, curved steel banisters, glass-paneled walls, and lighting fixtures so precise they seemed to follow her every breath. But even amid the tech perfection, there were interruptions, traces, ghosts almost. There, on the right, a wall of mounted glass marbles, hundreds of them, all the colors of the rainbow. Her hand reached for them without thinking. The clink they made sounded familiar. She squinted. She had a jar just like this once, back in Makoko. Her mother said she collected them from a place where people leave pieces of joy behind. Then, around the next corner, a red feather boa hung loosely from a doorknob. It looked silly, garish, but something in her paused. She had worn one just like it for a birthday her mother threw when she turned 3. There was no cake, just chin-chin in a recycled ice cream container and a bottle cap crown. Her mother had said, "A queen needs color, even in the dark," and just beyond that, a small table, low to the floor, with an unfinished wooden puzzle. One piece missing. The same giraffe puzzle she remembered biting in frustration when it wouldn't fit. Her chest tightened. Was she going mad? Or had she really been here? Before. Every room she entered echoed something inside her. A laugh, a scent, a flash. She moved through the house like someone navigating her own past, but from the outside in. When she entered the music room, the recognition was instant. A grand piano stood in the center, covered in a fine velvet cloth. Framed vinyl records adorned the walls, and a dusty tambourine lay gently on a windowsill. Then it started, soft, almost like breathing. A woman's voice, humming. That voice. Her mother's voice. Zara froze. The melody wrapped around her like warm fabric, pulling her down to the carpeted floor, where she sat, eyes wide. The song was old, slow, sung in Yoruba, a lullaby. Mo fe roro sun, be lotin yo. Tears ran silently down her cheeks, not just for the song, but for the fact that it was being played now, here, in a room she'd never stepped into before today. Or had she? The speaker above flickered. A screen unrolled from the ceiling, showing only words typed in bold font. She sang that every evening, even when I told her no one was listening. Zara looked up. Some songs weren't meant for ears, the text continued. They were meant for memory. "Are you watching me again?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Always. Why are you doing this? Why do I remember things I shouldn't? Why does this place feel like it knows me?" The screen didn't reply. Not immediately. Then, slowly. Because this house remembers what people forget. Hours passed in a gentle haze. Zara continued exploring, letting the rooms speak first. Sometimes it was a scent, ground nut stew lingering in a kitchen corner. Sometimes it was light, the flicker of sun on a toy stored behind glass. She didn't know what she was supposed to find, but it was clear she was meant to find something. In the backyard, a curved path led her through a corridor of white stones to a sealed greenhouse. Its glass walls were clouded, its door locked with an old-fashioned bronze latch, out of place among the house's digital interfaces. As she touched the door, an electric tremor rushed through her palm. Not pain. Not exactly. But a flood of emotion. Fear, joy, loss, confusion, all at once. She staggered back, gasping. Something happened here. She didn't know what, but her soul did. Back inside, she wandered toward a part of the house that seemed older, less polished. A narrow hallway she hadn't seen before. The walls were bare, The floor creaked slightly. At the end of the hall, a seam in the paneling caught her eye. Curious, she ran her fingers along it. It gave way. The panel slid open. Inside the narrow recess was a child's sketchbook, tucked neatly into a hollow space. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Crayon drawings, uneven and innocent. A sun with a smile. A stick figure of a woman holding hands with a little girl. And on the corner of the last page, a name. Temi, her own handwriting. Signed and dated. 15 years ago. Zara gasped. The book slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. She stared at it in stunned silence. This house didn't just remember her. It knew her. The sun had dipped low when Zara found it. The hallway that time had chosen to forget. It was hidden behind a velvet curtain near the library, a part of the house not shown by lights or revealed by automatic doors. No sensors guided her there. It was instinct, almost magnetic. Something old pulling her forward. The air shifted as she entered, warmer, dustier, real. Her fingers traced the faded wallpaper as she walked, every step releasing a puff of memory into the dim corridor. The silence was thicker here. Not digital silence, but the kind that came from years of secrets. And then, the portraits. 12 of them, in perfect alignment, framed in gold that had begun to tarnish. But these were no aristocrats or wealthy socialites. No. These were women of the house. Zara stepped closer, heart catching in her throat. Each woman was painted not with grandeur, but dignity, strength, familiarity. Their eyes seemed to follow her, each carrying a different story, some proud, some mournful, some quietly defiant. Each had a nameplate below the frame. Halima, keeper of keys. Kioma, the flame of the kitchen. Salome, eyes of the upper floor. And then, the fourth one. Aduni, heart of the house. Zara's breath caught. Her mother, younger, smiling. A subtle blush painted into her cheeks, as if the artist had tried to capture warmth, not beauty. She wore the same head wrap from the photograph, the one Zara still carried in her bag. Zara stepped closer. As she did, the lights in the hallway flickered, and then brightened. The same soft music from the piano room began to hum faintly from hidden speakers. It wasn't the house reacting to movement. It was reacting to recognition. She stood there for a long time, quiet, breathing. Then, voice low, she whispered into the silence, "Why didn't you tell me you were more than a cook?" The speaker beside the final portrait clicked on with a faint buzz. Lolu's voice. "I see you found them." Zara didn't turn. Who were they? The house remembers them. That's what matters. That's not what I asked. A pause. Then, they were the women who made this house breathe. They loved it, cared for it, raised children in it, protected it, and were forgotten for it. Zara clenched her jaw. Why are there only 12? Lolu's voice came slower this time. Because not everyone who leaves is gone. She turned finally, glaring at the speaker. You mean they disappeared? I mean, they never truly left. The speaker clicked off. Zara stood there, stunned. The hallway now felt more like a crypt than a gallery. She counted again. 12 portraits. But the wall was long enough for more. Maybe more had once hung there. Maybe one was gone. That night Zara lay awake in the guest room, the blanket pulled up to her chest, eyes fixed on the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about those faces, the titles, the odd reverence behind each woman's name, and her mother, the heart? What did that mean? Why had no one told her? She turned restlessly, unsure if she was imagining things when she saw it. Something sitting neatly on the edge of the bed. It hadn't been there before. A small, leather-bound book. She reached for it with trembling hands and opened it. A diary. The first page read, Property of Kioma, the Flame. She flipped through the pages. The handwriting was sharp, slanted, sometimes rushed. The house breathes more than it should. Some days it hums like it knows me. Some days it forgets I'm here. Aduni was always the center. When she cooked, the lights got warmer. When she cried, The pipes groaned. We were told never to mention the girl, but we knew, we all knew. The child is the key. One day she will return, and when she does, the house will wake. Zara dropped the book. Her chest ached, her hands trembled. There was something she was meant to do, and she didn't know what. Was this why the house let her in? Why the AI played her mother's song? Why Lolu, cold, elusive Lolu, let her stay? She returned to the portrait hallway before sunrise, needing to see her mother's face again, to feel anchored in something real. But when she turned the corner and stepped into the gallery, she froze. There were only 11 portraits now. The space where one had hung was empty, a blank spot, framed by dust. Zara's breath caught. One woman was missing. The dreams began softly, like whispers. At first, they slipped into her sleep, barely noticed, shadows flitting behind curtains, giggles trailing through hallways. But by the third night, they became vivid, waking, almost tangible. She was a child again, running through the very mansion she now walked as a stranger. Hide and seek. Her laughter echoed off marble, her small feet pattered through velvet-draped corridors. And someone, a boy, a man, chased her gently, always just out of reach. She could never see his face. Only the back of his white shirt, the curve of his shoulder, and the sound of her own breathless joy. And always, the same ending. She would hide behind the red curtains in the east wing. He would call her name, not Zara, but Temi. She woke each time with the name burning on her tongue, like a forgotten prayer. Temi. That morning, unable to shake the name from her mind, Zara descended into the lower levels of the mansion, deeper than she'd ever been allowed. The elevators refused to go below the basement, but a spiral staircase behind the kitchen pantry led her there. Manual, dusty, forgotten. The basement was darker, colder, rows of covered furniture, retired tech, and forgotten boxes. One shelf caught her eye, small, wooden, worn with time. A single item sat atop it, a rusted tin lunchbox. Yellow, dented, cartoon stickers faded. She reached for it, something inside her resisting. A pull of fear and familiarity tangled in one. The latch creaked open. Inside, a name tag, childishly scrawled in crayon. Temalola O, not Zara, not even close. She stepped back, her breath caught. Her mother never called her that. Or had she? Was Zara a nickname? A disguise? She closed her eyes and tried to remember. Not the stories she'd repeated, but what came before. Her earliest memories. Nothing came clearly. Only flashes, music, scents, shadows. And that voice again, calling Temi. Determined, she followed her instincts through another rusted door deeper into the basement. It led to a narrow corridor, blank walls, strange metal vents, ending in a heavy steel panel that opened not with a code, but a soft palm print scanner. It lit green at her touch. Inside was something like a control room, but old, not high-tech. Analog buttons, old CRT monitors, blinking lights. She brushed dust from one screen. It flickered. A video recording. A child, tiny, wide-eyed, no older than 3, sat on a stool, giggling, as a deep voice off-camera asked questions. "What's your name?" The girl beamed. "Temalola." "And who loves you the most in this whole house?" "You and Mummy and Kioma and the house and the stars." The camera shook slightly as the man behind it laughed, softly, warmly. Lolu. Zara fell into a chair, staring at the screen, heart pounding. He knew her. 15 years ago, she had lived here, played here, laughed here. Not as Zara, as Temi. Later, back in the main wing, she confronted him again. This time, she didn't plead. She stood before the intercom in the central hallway, voice low and firm. "You knew who I was the moment I walked in." The intercom buzzed quietly. No words. "You called me Temi, on the tape. You took care of me. You made me forget." Finally his voice, hushed, tinged with something heavier than regret. "You were never supposed to remember." Zara's fists clenched. "Why?" "That was the deal your mother made with me. When..." Everything fell apart. What deal? Memory for peace, silence for survival. You were meant to have a new life, far away from this house and its ghosts. But I came back, she said. The house called me back. Lolu's voice faltered. Then the house broke its promise. She stepped forward. Tell me the truth. Silence. Then the intercom powered off. That night, the house began to glitch. Lights flickered violently. Doors opened and slammed shut on their own. The temperature dropped in rooms and spiked in others. Music started and stopped, mid-note. The walls seemed to breathe. Zara moved through it like a ghost, arms folded, whispering over and over. Temi, Temi Lola, Ola Toye. She walked the hallway where her drawing had been found. She stood beneath her mother's portrait. She stepped into the marble foyer where she had first slept. Temi, she whispered again, to no one. And then, click. A sound she hadn't heard before. Metal against metal. A deep unlocking. From the west side of the house, the far wall of the west hallway. She turned slowly. A seam in the glass had split open, and behind it, a sealed elevator. Black, sleek, not on any blueprint she had seen. Its doors opened without a sound. Waiting. The doors slid open without a sound. Zara stood frozen at the threshold, unsure if what she was seeing was real, or another creation of the house's ever-shifting memory. The elevator was nothing like the others. Sleek, chrome walls, no buttons, no floor indicators, just a panel glowing faintly, as if recognizing her presence. She stepped inside. The doors sealed behind her. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the floor beneath her began to descend, smoothly, silently, endlessly, down into a space not registered on any blueprint or digital map. The lights overhead pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Hers, or the house's. She couldn't tell any more. After what felt like minutes, the elevator stopped. The doors opened to a corridor lined with light, but not ordinary light. Screens. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All playing loops of moments she couldn't fully remember. A birthday? A walk through sunlit gardens. A pillow fight on a red couch. A woman, her mother, laughing with her in a kitchen. A hallway dance. A quiet bedtime story. Zara stepped forward, mesmerized. Some of the clips tugged at her heart, achingly familiar. Others, not quite. They felt rehearsed, softened, smoothed over, like edited memories. One screen showed her falling and crying, only to be comforted instantly by a version of her mother who seemed too calm, as if reading a script. Another showed her birthday celebration, but the faces of other children were blurred, frozen, like figures added as decoration. Zara pressed her fingers to the glass of one screen. Which of these are real? She whispered. The house didn't answer. The corridor opened into a chamber, larger, darker, and in the center, a replica. Her home. The one from her first memories. Every detail exact. The stained plastic chairs. The uneven kitchen tiles. The little crack on the side of the TV. Even the green cup her mother always used, mismatched with the others, sat on the table. Zara's knees weakened. Was this her real past? Had she ever left this house? Or was her world, the streets, the orphanage, the hunger, part of something else? Had she lived her entire life inside a memory? Behind her, a soft hum. A light beamed down. And then Lolu appeared. Not in person, but as a projected hologram, faint, transparent, flickering slightly. He looked different, younger, his hair ungraying, his eyes less burdened. "Hello, Temilola," he said. Zara turned, swallowing the fear. "Why am I here?" "You were always here," he said gently, "in one way or another." She stepped closer. "Tell me the truth." He nodded, his image shifting as if straining to stay stable. "This was never about technology. It was about healing. Your mother came to me broken, grieving, afraid, desperate to give you a life untouched by the tragedy you'd lived through." Zara's throat tightened. "What tragedy?" He paused. "You were too young to remember, and we made sure of it. A fire, a loss, the kind that burns not just homes, but hearts. Your mind shut down parts of itself to survive. Your mother asked me to help. How? This house, this system. It became your sanctuary, a controlled world where grief could not follow. We rewrote memories, not with lies, but with carefully crafted truths. You played God, she said, voice sharp. We played parent, he corrected, when the world refused to. Zara looked around at the replica kitchen. And this? A safe space, a reconstruction, so you wouldn't be haunted by the smell of smoke or the silence of loss. Tears welled in her eyes. Then why let me leave? Why the streets? Why the hunger? You weren't meant to leave, he said. You were taken. Systems failed. We tried to find you, for years. She staggered back. So everything, my entire life out there, was a glitch? A consequence, he said softly. But not meaningless. You survived, Temmie. That means the therapy. Maybe it worked. She clenched her fists. You can't just rewrite someone's life. Lolu's image flickered. No, he admitted. But sometimes we do it to save them. Then he turned to the side. A secondary projection emerged, fainter, shakier. It was the kitchen again, but not Zara in it. A boy, about her age, chubby-cheeked, bright-eyed, drawing on the table. He turned toward the camera, and in the blur of light, she saw them, her eyes, reflected in his. The same shape, the same shade, the same glint of mischief and longing. Her breath hitched. Who is that? She asked. But the projection faded, the lights dimmed, and the elevator behind her opened once again, this time waiting to take her back. It started with a flicker. Zara was brushing her teeth in the guest bathroom when she saw it, a figure, not hers, moving slightly out of sync. At first, she thought it was a delayed mirror reflection, some glitch in the house's smart design. But when she turned her head left, the figure tilted right. When she raised her hand, it hesitated, then followed. A beat too late. A boy? Not a projection, not a memory, just a glimpse. And then he was gone. But the flashes kept coming. In hallway mirrors, in darkened windows, in the polished surface of a metal elevator wall. Always the same boy. Her age, her build, her eyes. A strange familiarity in his posture, as though they had grown up together, learned the same fears, wore the same masks. But Zara had no siblings. At least, that's what she'd always believed. One evening, chasing yet another flicker of him, Zara found herself back at the greenhouse, the sealed one that had overwhelmed her with emotion days ago. But this time, the door creaked open at her touch, vines curling around its hinges like fingers reluctant to let go. Beyond it, the wild bled into wonder. A secret garden, tangled and untamed. Nothing like the pristine digital landscape of the mansion's manicured lawns. This place was alive with chaos. Tall grasses, thorny roses, crumbling statues hidden beneath layers of moss. Sunlight spilled in strange, patchy angles, like the house itself didn't want to see this part of its memory. At the center stood a stone bench, carved delicately, wrapped in ivy. Zara cleared the vines, brushing dirt away from the inscription. For the twins, may they never remember. Her knees weakened. Twins? Her fingers traced the carved letters again and again, as if they might change, as if she could will them to mean something else. The boy wasn't a ghost. He was real, or had been, and something, or someone, didn't want her to know. That night, for the first time, Lolu stepped into the open. No intercom, no projection, just him, older, slower, dressed in dark linen, his once proud shoulders slightly hunched. He found her outside in the same garden, sitting on the stone bench, the ivy strands still clutched in, her hands. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside her, silent. Then he sat. They watched the stars rise in silence, tiny lights trembling across the night sky, as if mirroring everything inside them. You said I wasn't supposed to remember, Zara murmured. Lolu nodded slowly. Because remembering would have broken you. And maybe me. She turned to him. He was real? Yes. What was his name? Tayo. She blinked. I was Temmie. He was Tayo. Lolu's voice trembled. You were born minutes apart, always together, until the fire, until the grief. She shook her head. But there was no fire. There was, he said gently, but not the kind that burns buildings. It was the kind that burns inside people. Your parents, your family. You were caught in something cruel, something no child should have seen. When your mother brought you to me, she said, let her forget, or she will never grow. Zara stared at the bench. So you took Tayo away? No, the therapy did. We thought we could manage your memories, isolate the pain. But something went wrong. Tayo, his mind fractured first. He couldn't separate the real from the dream. And when his consciousness collapsed, your mother made a second decision, to erase him from you. Completely. So I wouldn't suffer. Lolu nodded. The house was programmed to adapt to emotional states. It read your grief, and hid what you weren't ready to face. It built a world around your healing. It gave you safety. It gave you lies. She swallowed hard. But now? It woke because you did. You returned. And somewhere inside, you started remembering. A wind passed through the garden, rustling the trees like whispers between ghosts. Zara leaned back, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. He's in the house, isn't he? Pieces of him, echoes. Yes, she closed her eyes. What happens now? Lolu looked toward the mansion. Its windows glowed faintly in the night, watching, waiting. Now, he said, you choose. Remember him, or let him go. But know this, forgetting again won't bring peace, and remembering won't erase the pain. When Zara woke the next morning, the hallway lights were dim. She moved slowly toward the portrait gallery, unsure of what she would find. The music began as she turned the corner. Soft, slow, hauntingly familiar. She froze. Her mother's portrait, the one that used to smile alone, was gone. In its place, a new one hung. Two children, a girl and a boy, holding hands beneath a tree full of marbles. The same eyes, one nameplate beneath, Temi and Tayo, children of the house. The house had changed, not suddenly, but with quiet certainty, like the slow bloom of morning after a long, starless night. Where once it had felt sterile and watching, the mansion now felt warm, intentional. Each step Zara took was met with light that wasn't just reactive, but thoughtful. Doors opened not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen, even when no one was cooking. The classical music that used to echo from speakers now felt more like a hum, a lullaby whispering through walls. With every truth Zara accepted, the house softened, as if it too was remembering. In the dining hall, Duni finally broke her silence. The housekeeper, always quiet, always efficient, stood at the window one morning, folding napkins with precision, when she spoke without turning around. I used to hold you when you cried, she said. Zara froze. You had a colic scream, Duni continued, high-pitched. Your brother would cover his ears. I used to sing you Yoruba lullabies to soothe you. Your mother made me swear never to say a word after it all. Zara stepped closer. Why didn't you tell me before? Duni turned. Her eyes were watery, but steady. Because we were told you'd forget, and forgetting was a kind of mercy. But the house remembered even when we couldn't. Each day, Zara wandered deeper into the mansion, not searching now, but reconnecting. She'd open drawers and find childhood trinkets, a cracked rubber duck, a string of beads, a yellow paper crown. In the laundry room, she caught the scent of her mother's favorite fabric softener and wept silently against a wall. She spent hours in the kitchen, placing her hands where her mother once stirred, danced, scolded. In the evenings, she would sit by the garden and speak to Tayo, the boy in the mirror, not to summon him, but to honor him. And with each memory reclaimed, the house responded in kind. It lit itself in warmer tones. It played softer, older songs. And when she passed certain corridors, it projected small images, flickers of past laughter, Echoes of footsteps, now long gone. The house was healing with her. Lolu changed too. The man who once hid behind cameras and cold intercoms now walked the halls in silence, gaunt, tired, but freer. He opened his study for the first time in years. Zara found him there one afternoon, sorting through yellowed documents and dusty journals. He offered her a seat without words, and they sat, side by side, for hours. No questions, no confessions, just the quiet companionship of two people bound by time and memory. He showed her a photo she'd never seen. Her mother, holding both children, smiling wide with exhaustion and pride. "She made me promise," he said, "that no matter what happened, you would never know suffering." "She didn't fail," Zara whispered. "Neither did you," he replied. That night, she followed a hallway she'd never noticed. Tucked behind a bookshelf in the east wing, she found a tiny door. When she opened it, a wave of scent and color overwhelmed her. Inside was her old bedroom. Not recreated, preserved. Drawings on the wall, lullabies painted in child's handwriting, toys sealed in glass. Her baby blanket folded neatly on a miniature bed. She knelt beside a music box and turned the key. A gentle tune filled the space. The same one her mother used to hum. The same one the house had played on her first night back. It was all here, every piece of her, waiting. Later that evening, she found Lolu seated beneath the chandelier, staring into the flickering light like it held answers he couldn't find. She poured him tea, and he smiled faintly. "You've woken the house," he said. "I think it was waiting for me." "No," he murmured. "It was waiting for you to remember." He coughed softly, then reached for her hand. His skin was cold, thinner than before. "There's one room," he whispered. Zara leaned closer. "One room you must never enter." His eyes fluttered. And then, without ceremony, his body collapsed forward, teacup shattering as it hit the floor. The hallway was dark, darker than the rest of the mansion, as if even the light bulbs knew this part of the house was meant to be forgotten. But Zara couldn't ignore the pull. Lolu's words haunted her. "One room you must never enter." He had said it with trembling lips and fading strength. And yet, even as his body collapsed and staff tended to him, she felt the weight of his words wrap around her like a dare. She waited until nightfall. The mansion was silent, its AI subdued, its lights soft and low, like a house in mourning. That was when she slipped past the main wing, through the hidden passage near the wine cellar, and stood before the velvet-covered door. It was unlike any other in the house, old-fashioned, heavy, red velvet panels stretched across it, fastened with brass studs that gleamed faintly. A small silver plaque rested above the knob, engraved with a single word, Aduni. Her mother's name. Zara's hand trembled as she reached for the handle. It was locked, but as she pressed her palm against the velvet, the lock clicked softly, not with resistance, but as though the room had been waiting for her all along. Inside, the air was warm, not stale, not forgotten, preserved. The room wasn't large, but it was dense, thick with memory. Shelves lined the walls, filled with devices, old voice recorders, USB drives, tiny cassettes labeled in delicate handwriting. Screens embedded into the walls glowed faintly, displaying paused moments, her mother stirring a pot, tying Zara's jewel, laughing as she spilled palm oil on the counter. In the center of the room stood a plush red armchair, and beside it, a speaker, not like the rest in the house, but old, wood-framed, humming softly. Zara stepped closer. The moment her fingers touched the chair, the room stirred. A voice filled the air, soft, vibrant, heartbreakingly familiar. Her mother. "If you're hearing this, my Temmie, it means the house kept its promise. Or maybe you broke it, like your father always did." A soft laugh. "Either way, I knew you'd find this room. You always had a way of finding hidden things." Zara lowered herself into the chair. She didn't cry. Not this time. She listened. The recordings began to play, one after the other. Her mother's voice reading stories, singing lullabies, whispering affirmations, laughing, comforting a baby through a fever, talking to someone, maybe Lolu, about Zara's favorite meals, her first steps, her nightmares. This room wasn't built to hold secrets. It was built to hold love. The music that lulled her to sleep, the warmth in the lights, the scent of stew in empty kitchens, the sudden melodies during her sadness. They all came from here, from this room, from her mother. This was Lolu's final gift, not an inheritance, not protection, companionship, for a girl left too soon, for a memory too fragile to bear. And as she sat in that room, Zara began to speak, not to the speakers, but to the little girl inside her. "Tammy," she whispered, "you weren't abandoned, you weren't forgotten, you were loved completely, even in the silence." She found one last recording. It was labeled in her own handwriting, shaky, barely legible. "To future me." She played it. A tiny voice crackled through the speakers. "Hi, I'm Temmie. I like red and stars and beans, but not onions. If you're me later, don't be scared. Grown-ups lie a lot, but Mummy doesn't. And if you forget me, it's okay. I'll still like you." Zara laughed through her tears. The house didn't just remember her. It had preserved the version of her that had hope. The next morning, Lolu woke, pale, weak, but breathing. Zara was there. He looked at her with heavy, watery eyes. "You found it," he said, barely above a whisper. She nodded. It was beautiful. A faint smile touched his lips. She would have wanted that. "I wish you'd told me sooner." "I had to wait," he replied, "until the house told me you were ready." As if on cue, the mansion dimmed gently. The lights, once bright and clinical, shifted into something warm and golden. The walls hummed, not mechanically, but musically. And then, the AI voice spoke, no longer cold, no longer robotic, soft, feminine, familiar. "She is ready." The air in the mansion had shifted, not with fear or suspense, but with finality. A kind of quiet that settles when something sacred is about to end. The chandeliers no longer flickered with cold LED light. Instead, they glowed like early morning sunlight. Even the floors, once echoing with Zara's hesitant footsteps, now received her like an old friend returning home. She found Lolu in the sunroom, wrapped in a shawl, watching the garden sway gently in the wind. His skin was paler, his breath slower, but his eyes, when they found her, were steady. "You always find the quiet corners," he said. "You always leave your truths there," she replied. He chuckled, weakly. "Your mother used to say that. You remember her laugh now, don't you?" Zara nodded. "I remember everything." He reached beside him and picked up a small ivory box. Inside was a key, sleek, metallic, warm to the touch. "The house recognizes you now," he said. "Its core system, the memory AI, it's all yours, every file, every room, every choice." Zara's hand trembled as she took it. "But why me?" "Because you're the last keeper," he whispered. "Everyone else, they were pieces. You were the purpose." She sat beside him, words caught between gratitude and grief. "You built this house to heal me," she said. "I built this house," he murmured, "to heal us all." That evening, as the sky turned burnt orange over Ikoyi, Zara sat alone in the music room. The walls, once filled with ghost songs and scattered memories, now pulsed with calm. No illusions, no distractions, just her, and one final recording. She had saved it for this moment, a simple file labeled Aduni, Final Lullaby. She pressed play, and the voice filled the room, strong, maternal, and soft with sadness. "Temmie, if you're hearing this," then Lolu kept his word. "That means you made it. You're whole. And I'm proud of you." Zara closed her eyes. No letters, no last secrets. Just this lullaby. You always slept to it, even on hard days. The melody came through gently, the same song that had hummed through her dreams since the day she arrived, the one her mother sang while peeling yam, the one the AI had whispered into the silence of lonely nights. Zara pressed her hand to her chest and let it wash over her. The healing wasn't instant. It wasn't loud. But it was real. She had become whole, not by forgetting, but by remembering. Later that night, she returned to the sunroom. Lolu lay there, asleep, chest rising softly, face turned toward the stars. She didn't wake him. She simply pulled the blanket higher, sat beside him, and held his hand. The house dimmed its lights, as if bowing. The music stopped. The air grew still. He passed just before midnight. No final words, no dramatic gestures, just peace and presence. At dawn, the mansion sighed. The doors, long silent, clicked softly. Zara stood in the main foyer, barefoot once again, though no longer out of desperation. She had bathed, dressed simply, wrapped her mother's scarf around her shoulders, and opened every window in the house. And then, the gate. It slid open, just as it had for her. The sun rose behind a figure standing at the threshold, small, barefoot, clutching something tightly. A boy, maybe 8, skin ash-dusted, eyes wide, holding a paper boat in one hand. He didn't speak, neither did she. She stepped forward, knelt at the edge of the marble steps, and offered her hand. The boy looked past her into the mansion, into the warmth, and he nodded. The boy stood exactly where she once had, barefoot on the marble steps, arms tucked into the sleeves of an oversized shirt, hair matted from sleep or sorrow. It was hard to tell where he'd come from. His face was unfamiliar, but his posture, the way he gripped the crumpled paper boat in his hand, Zara recognized that language, the language of the lost. She didn't rush to him. She didn't speak. She simply stood at the doorway, dressed in white, her mother's scarf draped across her shoulders, eyes calm, still as sunrise. The boy looked up. The mansion didn't wait for instructions. The door opened. Lights bloomed down the hallway like petals unfurling. The AI, now as soft and quiet as a mother waking her child, scanned the boy silently. "He has known pain too," it whispered to Zara. She nodded. "Then he's home." She didn't ask him his name. Not yet. She didn't demand answers, or histories, or tears. She simply led him to the kitchen, the same one her mother once ruled, where the tiles were slightly uneven and the light filtered through a stained glass window like warm honey. She handed him a warm towel, sat him on the stool she once called her throne, and served him ogi and akara. He ate in silence, glancing up between bites to study her face. Not out of fear, out of disbelief, the kind children carry when safety feels too good to be true. When he finished, he whispered, "Can I stay?" Zara smiled. "As long as you need." The house had changed, again. But this time, not for her. For him. The corridors, once echoing with distant memory, now pulsed with present life. The speakers no longer played lullabies from the past. They hummed with soft jazz, high life, and the occasional splash of Afrobeat when the boys smiled. Zara had created something new. Not a tech empire, not a legacy of code or innovation. She had built a sanctuary of presence. She didn't erase the past. She taught children to carry it gently. The house, with its intelligent walls and emotional sensors, no longer existed as a monument to grief. It had become something softer, a teacher, a listener, a companion. She had taken Lolu's creation and stripped it of its cold design. Now, the AI responded with empathy, not protocol. It asked questions like, "Would you like the sun today?" and "Shall I play the song that calms you?" Each child who arrived, and more did, was met not with questions, but with space. Space to feel, space to remember, space to heal. The portraits were restored. Zara personally oversaw it. She cleaned each frame, reframed the missing one, returned her mother's portrait to its rightful place, but left the double portrait, Temi and Tayo, hanging in the center of the hallway, where it caught the morning light. She added plaques. Each one told the story of the woman it represented, no longer titles, now names and legacies. Kioma, who taught laughter in silence. Salome, whose hands knew every sorrow. Aduni, who became the heartbeat of a house. Visitors often paused there. Children stared in awe. Some asked questions. Zara answered them all. One afternoon, while clearing the front courtyard with the boy, who still hadn't spoken much, she saw him crouch near the stone pathway. He had found a piece of chalk, a pale blue nub, worn from rain. She watched quietly as he began to draw. At first, she thought it was a star, then a circle. But then her breath caught in her chest. He drew a shape with two swirls crossing each other, a symbol she hadn't seen in years. Not since the therapy chamber, not since her mother's memory recordings. It was the same symbol she had once drawn as a child, over and over again, on scraps of paper, on fogged mirrors in the dirt outside her school, a symbol she thought only belonged to her and her brother. The boy stood, dusted his palms, and looked at her. "I don't know why," he said, "but I've always drawn that." Zara's heart thundered. She knelt beside the drawing. The chalk squeaked as she added a final line, completing the symbol, exactly the way her brother used to. Their eyes met. And in that moment, she realized, some memories don't come from stories. Some come from something deeper, something shared. The wild garden had once been a place of tangled sorrow, overgrown, ignored, half swallowed by ivy and memory. But now it breathed again. Zara moved slowly along its winding paths, planting with careful hands and quiet reverence. What was once thorned and forgotten had become sacred ground. Each flower, each shrub bore a name: Salome's whisper, Kioma's grace, Tayo's reach. And in the center, nestled in the soil beneath the sun's full gaze, stood a rosebush with soft, golden petals, opening gently to the light. Aduni's light. Zara knelt beside it every morning. She spoke to her mother there, not for answers, but for gratitude. The mansion was no longer a secret, not fully. Children came now, not in crowds, but in quiet numbers. Some led by nuns, others by social workers. Some simply arrived on their own, drawn by whispers and open doors. They came not for riches, but for refuge. Zara never advertised the house. It had no website, no program, only presence. Each child who entered was met with warmth. The AI welcomed them softly, with a voice that adapted to their fears, their pace, their unspoken need. They were allowed to roam, to choose their rooms, to sit in silence if they wished. The smart systems no longer tracked data. They tracked comfort. They played songs that matched mood, diffused sense of home, dimmed lights when tension rose. Healing here wasn't prescribed. It was allowed. And the boy? The one who had drawn the symbol in chalk? His name was Ikoyi. Zara hadn't pried. Not at first. But months after he settled into the house, a letter arrived. Not from a stranger, but from the orphanage that had placed him, tucked far in the northwestern village of Otan-Ile, a sleepy place few remembered. She read the file once, twice, and froze. He'd been adopted from the same village where her mother had grown up, the same village Aduni left when she came to Lagos at 17. There were no birth records, only a name scribbled in the margin of a caretaker's notes: a bike's boy. Zara stared at it for a long time. A bike. Her mother's younger sister. If wasn't a stranger. He was blood. She never told him, not in words. She let the house do the speaking, through stories told in music, in shadows, in smell. If thrived. He laughed now. He played piano with too much energy, spilled akara crumbs in the study, argued with the AI over what music should play during dinner. Zara watched him and saw fragments of herself. But more importantly, she saw the future. She began speaking too, not to crowds, but to small circles, youth leaders, community therapists, survivors. She didn't bring presentations, no tech slides, no TED-style speeches. She brought truth. She spoke of how memory could be a prison, or a path. How forgetting is sometimes survival, but remembering is often the only way to truly live. Her words didn't echo from stages. They echoed in hearts. On the first anniversary of the mansion's awakening, Zara walked the memory garden alone. The sky was pale, painted in soft blue and rose gold. She stopped beneath the tree of hanging bells, one for each soul who passed through the house and left lighter than they came. As the wind stirred, the bells chimed in layered tones, music without melody, yet whole. Then the house spoke. Just once. For the first time in many months. Its voice, a blend of Lolu's clarity and Aduni's warmth, filled the morning air. The orphan was never alone. Zara closed her eyes. Not in sadness, in peace. She returned to the main door, standing where she once had, barefoot, heart full, the scar on her cheek no longer a wound, but a signature. She watched the road. Nothing came. No footsteps, no lost child, no miracle, just light. And that was enough. Still, the mansion door opened. Not automatically. Not by code. Not by hidden sensor. It opened because she opened it. Because someone had finally built a door that knew not how to keep pain out, but how to let healing in. The mansion door opens again, not by magic, but because someone finally built it to welcome pain, not hide from it. Did this story touch your heart the way it touched mine? If you believe in healing, memory, and second chances, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below. What would you name your own memory garden? Let's keep telling stories that matter, together.